Well, howdy. As you can see, I'm on the way again. Spent a few days in Edmonton, visited with somebody, and then just kind of hung around. But now, on to a place called Spruce Grove to pick up a couple of things. And then also drive a couple hundred miles, and it's just going to be a whole bunch of prairie, I think. So that's on the agenda for today, unless we come up across something that we don't expect to come across. Well, howdy from Spruce Grove in Alberta, just a few miles west of Edmonton. Spent a few days in Edmonton, visited with somebody for a couple days, and then just kind of hung around after that for a little while. But now back on the way westwards to Alaska. But look what I came across. It's the Alberta Wheat Pool, or Spruce Grove Wheat Elevator. But what's so special about this wheat elevator? Well, it's made out of wood. You might remember from the first walk across America when I was going through Kansas and all those grain elevators, which were all pretty much cement. First one I've seen it made out of wood. And it's still operational. Let's go take a look. Okay, so we're here inside here, the Spruce Grove, the old Spruce Grove grain elevator made completely out of wood. And I'm going to tell you what I just learned. And if I forget stuff, Paul here is going to jump in. Say hi, Paul.
Hello.
And so anyway, what happens here is the farmer would bring his wagon in, or his truck in later days, bring it right here to the grate. And then they had a system here, unlike in the newer elevators, they had a system here where he would come into this thing here and then tilt up the front of the wagon or the front of the truck, as the case may be. And then, as you can see right here, would pour the wheat or the canola or the oats, whatever it is, into the grate. Before they did that, though, they checked for the grade of wheat grain that it was. They'd also check for moisture, and if everything was good to go, then they do their thing. And the wheat goes down in here into the bin. No, what do they call this?
Well, this would be just you call it a bin.
Bin, okay. And then from the bin, the buckets scoop it all up, just like you might remember from the one in Kansas from a couple years ago. I'll show you that right here. But just like that one, then the buckets would do their thing, go up to a big series of bins that are scattered throughout the complex here, and then they would use this dial to determine which bin the grain's going to go into. Then they write down how much and what bin it went into right there. And then when it came time to get it out of here, there was a series of levers right here that they would pull in order to bring out the appropriate stuff from the appropriate bin. And then it would come through a tube, and through the tube, how do we open this here? Right out here, and then right into the train car. Train car would get filled, and then take it off to wherever it is going to take it. And so that's how a grain elevator works. That's how these old ones work too. And the interesting thing about this one, like I mentioned when I first came in, it's all made out of wood. And if you check out these walls are all made of stacked wood. It's not like frame structure, but all the wood planks were stacked on top of each other, and every now and then they put in nails to hold them together. But the wood planks were started with 2x8s.
2x8s.
And then as you got higher, they went to 2x6s. And as you got higher and higher, they went to 2x4s, so that the weight per foot got a little bit less, so that you weren't top heavy and all that. So, and the other thing too about these structures. You know, look at the complexity of this whole thing. But once they designed it and got all the materials in place, in about 1 month, this whole thing was up and operational. So pretty amazing what they could do, you know, even without the modern technology. And there's an interesting story about this this grain elevator. This is one of 3 that remains in Spruce Grove, because back in 1995, right?
Yep, 95.
In 1995, the other 2 went poof, and this one almost did the same thing. But as a result, not only did those 2 grain elevators burn to the ground, but so did the lumber mill, and so did the whole town, just about. So these things may be a modern or a marvel of engineering, but also, yep, they could be a little bit dangerous. Oh, one other thing too I want to tell you about, and maybe this is what caused the fire over there, is that when the wheat gets poured in here to the bin, the reason that they got to be so careful in determining the moisture content, which is, where would they do that again?
So their humidity tester would be right here.
Okay, so the reason that they want to be very careful about the moisture content, and 14% was a cutoff as far as...
Dependent on what grain it was. They actually had this lovely little sheet here. Left here to make it more visible for you. They've nailed that right in there for us.
Yeah,
But
okay.
this sheet here would be their guideline of what the maximum and minimum they could take in for grain for
Okay.
what humidity it was before it was too risky for them to hold.
Okay, so generally speaking, 14% more or less.
That was around that area.
Yeah, is what they wanted the grain, the wheat to be or less, because if it was any higher, excuse me, if it was any higher, what happens with wheat is that it'll tend to heat up. The wetter it is, the more it'll heat up, and then unlike other kinds of grains where they just kind of get moldy and turn into a gelatinous mass, wheat will go kaboom, and so that's why you don't want wet wheat in your grain elevators. Did I get that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And the problem with dry grain was if it got super dusty in here, wheat dust was super volatile, so they had to always have, you'll see the no smoking signs everywhere. There was symbols everywhere because these places were tinder boxes meant to blow.
Yeah.
If too much grain dust got in here and so much as a spark lit up, this thing would basically be doing a moon launch and you'd be all manner of bones and no skin.
So, yeah, so, you know, grain elevators, it just seems like such a simple thing, but no, it's not. So anyway, that's that's your tour of the Spruce Grove grain elevator, and thank you very much, Paul.
Oh yeah, thanks for coming by.
And then we're going to hit the road west and end up wherever it is we're going to end up tonight, but I think we're going to go about, let's see, 200 miles. That's about, what, 320 kilometers? Oh, I'm learning kilometers. So let's go hit the road. I made a quick stop in a place called Whitecourt because I saw this come up on the map. It's the Whitecourt Visitor Center, and actually I want to show it to you because it's actually pretty unique how they do visitor centers here that I've noticed in Canada. The visitor centers are usually, let me back up. If you've been driving, you've been on the interstate or something, and you come across a visitor center like in a rest area or something, those are usually operated by federal or a state agency, sometimes a county. But all these visitor centers that I've come across here in Canada, they're all operated by individual communities. So this one here is operated by the town of Whitecourt. And let me show you the inside real quick, and then I'll also show you what they've got over here on the outside. So look at this. Not only do they have the usual brochures and pamphlets and maps and stuff, but they've got this little interpretive center, and it kind of goes through the different eras and stages of the community here. This, of course, starting with the Indians or the native people that were here first, or I guess they call them the First Nations. And then it goes on to document the whole history of the area. So you've got the settlers that came in here, and stuff that perhaps people from a long time ago would have in their house. And then the big thing here is also, and we'll see it here on the other side, is this was a big lumber processing area. So you can see the old lumber sawmill there. And, oh, hi, how you doing, old grizzly bear? They got a little bit here about wildland fires and everything. And you may have heard about the fires that have been going on. Now they just got all drenched with rain, so they're pretty much, the fires are out, but now they're flooding. But then the big lumber mill, which is just right outside of town, alongside the Athabasca River. So anyway, Whitecourt it started way back in the day with the trappers, the fur trappers that came through, and then eventually the settlers came through, the lumber mill came through, and a little bit more of industry. The farmers came through. So it's a little bit of everything here. Whitecourt is actually, I guess, on the edge of where the prairie is and where the forests start. And I'll show you a little taste of what some early homes look like. So first up, we've got a replica of an old trapper's cabin. And they actually have information from a guy who built a cabin just like this. Just think about this. This was all done by hand. All these logs are done by hand, and the bark chipped off and then sanded down. And the story goes it took him about a year to build this thing, but very simple little one-room cabin. And then as we go on over here, we've got actually a couple of original places that were moved here. This was built by a family in 1919, and another one-room cabin type of place. And look at this. Got the bed, the trunk for your clothes. This is probably your cooking stuff here. Oh, and they had a organ and table. How about that? And then over here, this one's like the Taj Mahal. This one here was built in 1910. And the guy who built it, he used only 3 tools to build it. An axe, a broad axe, and what else was it? A cross-cut saw. So just think, building this whole thing, just 3 implements, all by hand, and then doing the mortar and all that. But these were pretty cozy kind of places, weren't they? Baby goes there. And then, of course, you got the old church that was here. maybe decorated a little bit modernly. But yeah, it's always interesting to see these places and how all this stuff, you know, we slap up our houses with all the pneumatic tools and the tractors and the electrical tools and stuff. And these guys did it all by hand. So really a interesting find along the road here. We're still along Highway 43. And again, this is near Whitecourt. And I'm glad I stumbled across it. And now, off to, I don't know, where I'm going to stay tonight. Probably somewhere along the road. And probably knows I got a cough. I got this in Montana. And it's almost like the exact same thing that I got on the first walk across America. I got that that upper chest crud, just coughing. And so I had that cough all the way from Missouri to West Virginia. So I'm guessing on this cough here, I'll probably have it all the way from Montana. Oh, I don't know, down to Juneau, Alaska. Or maybe even down to Washington when I get back there. All right, let's go.
It took mighty men like Sam McCord to tame a town like Nome. The Yukon breed of fighting men had a code all their own. They'd stand up to a grizzly
So
bear and put him
the
in
mystery
his
stands, and nobody knows where Albert Johnson came from and where he got his money, and why he came up to the Yukon territories to live in a little cabin like that.